This is the reason why OpenAI's new O1 model is not nearly as hyped as previous ones like GPT-3 and GPT-4. Here's an example of a real product converting a Figma design to code using Claude versus O1, and you can see firsthand that O1 is way slower. It's also substantially more expensive and only sometimes better and sometimes not. So why is OpenAI investing so much behind O1? It all has to do with this. AI progress is slowing. Each new large language model that comes out seems to be only incrementally better than the prior ones. And it's expected that OpenAI's latest model, Orion, isn't even always better than GPT-4. And if you're wondering why would that be, part of it has to do with this. We're simply running out of data to train on. So if we're hitting limits on how smart we can make AI models, what can we do instead? Where a lot of untapped potential exists today is making them faster. We need to look at where the AI players are investing, and they're investing in more and more specialized hardware to make inference faster as well as lower cost by building their own data centers and investing in nuclear power to provide lower cost power. It's possible that the next breakthroughs will come from highly LLM optimized hardware. Companies like Grok and Cerebras have seen up to 10x performance increases in this very specialized compute. And these aren't just hypotheticals. Amazon's already released their new chips, and mega companies like Apple are planning on using them. Faster inference can open up new workflows that previously just didn't make sense because the long waits would just create too bad of a user experience. But at the rate LLMs still make mistakes, does it matter being faster if they can't be any smarter? Or put differently, if AI is plateauing on how smart we think we can make it, can we use increased speed and decreased cost to find another path to smarter outputs from AI? You might be surprised by the answer. For instance, if I show you this, you'd automatically know the answer is 7. So would an LLM. Daniel Kahneman calls this sort of automatic fast thinking System 1 thinking, and it seems to work a lot like LLMs work today. You always get an answer fast, but as complexity increases, it may no longer be accurate. If I asked you to just spit out the answer mentally to this, would you know it? If you're like most people, probably not. So what would you do instead? You break the problem down to be something like this. A series of small steps, each of which you can automatically answer. Once you combine them, you reach your final conclusion. Daniel Kahneman calls this System 2 thinking. And if you look at O1, this is basically exactly what it's doing. If you ask ChatGPT a more complicated math problem, you'll see that it'll break it down step by step into smaller pieces it can reliably output and connect it to a final answer, a lot like a human thinks. In fact, this can really help with one of LLM's biggest Achilles heels, hallucinations. If you ask O1 how many R's are in the word strawberry, it might regurgitate a wrong answer, like here it first thinks 5, but also you probably couldn't regurgitate something too. You'd have to mentally go through the letters and count them. That's what O1 does next, and then it comes up with the correct answer. Now, while this is really interesting, it's not entirely novel. Chain of thought approaches like this have existed for a while. And while training a model to use this approach specifically is relatively new, we're already seeing open source copycats with similar performance, like the QWQ model from Alibaba. It's not a fundamentally new technique or approach, but it does seem like it could be useful, especially when you consider speeds increasing and costs decreasing. We can afford to take that time to come up with better answers without hurting the user experience. The problem, though, is that while O1 doesn't always give a better answer to every type of problem, it is always more expensive. Currently, O1 Preview costs 4 times more per token than Claude Sonnet, but it also will output 2 to 10 times more tokens because it uses tons of tokens while it's thinking. So that means the total cost of an output from O1 could be up to 40 times what it is for Sonnet and not always be better. But the other thing it'll always be is slower, sometimes insanely slow. And the worst part is you often don't see any result from O1 for up to 10, 20, 30 or more seconds, which creates a much worse user experience. Here we're using O1 versus Claude in a real product, Builder.io, which converts Figma designs to code. If you could import a design and click a button and see code stream immediately, versus if you had to click a button and wait for up to 30 seconds or more before anything even happened, and the results were a similar quality, I think users would take the first one every time. Not to mention that that product costs $20 per month now. If the model cost 40 times more, I don't think you'd want to pay $800 a month for a marginally better, if at all, incredibly slower offering. So if this really is what we're seeing, why is this still pretty interesting? The reason is AI agents. Everybody's talking about them. We want to use AI to complete a series of tasks for us without the need for constant human supervision. In order to do that, AI has to be better at breaking things down and completing them step by step. It also has to have a less failure rate and catch its own mistakes sooner. Large language models historically are trained on all the text and code from the internet. So they're really good at completing the next token or word from a sentence, but they just weren't trained to break down and execute tasks. With O1, we're seeing cases where, well, what if we did? What happens? Complicated step-by-step problems do perform better when you train on that type of problem. And while it's unclear how soon we'll really have effective agents helping us out, given, for instance, that Claude's computer use today only has a 15% success rate at real-world tasks, the question becomes, how much better can this get with novel training methods? Is this going to lead to a new set of breakthroughs like some people believe, or will this be the start of an AI bubble burst? Because while we keep preaching about big new AI innovations, the average person's life has probably not changed much. If AI models aren't getting that much better, and these new techniques don't lead to major new breakthroughs, we might find that some of the hype will start to cool off. And that may not be the worst thing. When the dot-com bubble burst, lots of companies went under, even those that raised hundreds of millions in funding. The internet eventually became huge, but the mistake people believed back in 2000 and before was that everything would be huge, right away, right now, that there would be no additional challenges that took time to solve. Some people seem to believe this with AI. Everything's getting better. There's no looking back. The reality is, there will be hard problems. There will be S-curve progress. And while it's possible that AI could solve an immense amount of problems, it may not be today. Some of them might not be effective enough for mass adoption until even a decade from now. Companies like Webvan and Pets.com were totally viable internet businesses, but not for another 10 years, while some other players were able to create effective businesses in the early days and continue to grow even through today. The big question is, which AI products will show that they really do work for real users day to day, and which are just hype and just not good enough until a series of additional progress happens, which can take a short while or a very long while. It's easy to see the breakthroughs and assume those will keep coming. The reality is we just don't know yet. What we do know, though, is there are some use cases that are seeming to work quite well. AI chat assistants can be incredibly helpful for brainstorming, researching, writing, editing, and a variety of other types of tasks. The other big winner lately has been AI-assisted coding, whether you use a special IDE, Copilot, a full-on application builder, or a more specialized tool, like those that can convert designs into high-quality code. These are a few products that are seeing major adoption with generally happy users. And so while the future is uncertain, and maybe agents will change everything as soon as next year, I'm paying closest attention to these categories, and I'm really excited to see what's coming next.